I'm going to ask John Espy if he'll come and join me at the table. I wanted to invite John this week to come for three really simple reasons. A, he's one of my favorite conversation partners. B, he's already read the book before, and ours are not here yet. So if you were planning on buying one at the welcome table, they won't be here till next week, right? So if you didn't buy it on Kindle, they'll be here next week. But John already had it in his possession, so I thought, well, that makes perfect sense. But the third reason is that John is he is our minister who watches over our spiritual practices. And so it was a perfect week as we start this conversation about practicing faith. Where's my copy? There it is. Practicing faith. I wanted to ask if you come to the table and just chat a little bit about this.
Well, this book is a lot about the external part of practicing our faith, getting out where the rubber meets the road. But I think the implicit internal part of that is the spiritual practices of prayer, meditation, divine reading of Scripture, which we're doing tonight, Lectio Divina, healing practices, walking the labyrinth, those types of things that allow us to go inside to actually access that well that then feeds us and quenches our thirst, that allows us to go out into community and be in community, which is a lot of what this book is about.
You and I have been able to spend a lot of time together over this last year.
You think? With the sawzall and circular saw and all those wonderful things, ladders,
ladders and paintbrushes, and one of the things that you have talked about is that you had a desire for decades for a spirituality that would satisfy.
Yes.
And you have really invested in both groups that prioritize that. You've sought out a spiritual counselor on your own that you go to for spiritual direction. And the way that you have invited people here to come and try different practices. Where do you, that desire that you had, how did you have the strength to hold on year after year, decade after decade with that? Where did that come from?
Just a deep yearning. Just a deep desire for something.
Yeah, and you've tried 100 things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And some of them were more effective than others, and some of them lasted for a season. And did you find that in the midst of that there was something that really benefited you to grow that desire, to feed that desire? Was there anything particular that you found most satisfying?
Any one thing. I don't know that there's any one thing, because it's just something that's so deeply ingrained in me. You say for decades, it's like all the decades of my life, basically, I've had this yearning and this sense of something else. And I still can't say that I can define what that something else is, but I've found it in various ways. A spiritual director over 17 years has really helped me keep into the pursuit of that, the clarification of that, discernment of what it is that I'm looking for. But once again, it's like the name of God. There is no name of God that we can use that really tells us who God is. God is simply a placeholder for that we can't really name. You know,
it's interesting when you and I talk, this idea that there's no one practice that's a magic bullet that fixes everything. There's no one moment that fixes you as a person and makes you everything that you hoped to be. And there's no one practice that leads you to the place that your heart longs to go.
And it's good to have several different practices that you work with, because we have a labyrinth out here. The labyrinth has been a profound experience, walking the labyrinth, a profound experience for me at times, but it doesn't sustain me every single day. There's other things, reading, it's mixing it up for me. For some people, one thing can sustain them, a daily hour of prayer or whatever else. Other people can't sustain that. I try to meditate every day. I make it about once or twice a week. It would be difficult for me to do something like that every single day and have nothing else but that one practice. It's good to have multiple things that I do.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. So you've read this book before. Is there anything as you re-looked at this first chapter about desire that stood out to you that you wanted to point people to as kind of a commercial to get them interested?
I guess just in glancing over it, it's the importance of community. This is basically a way of building community and sustaining community. And I think that in looking at it, it reminded me of how lonely we've become in our culture. We have a culture of so many distractions. Distractions that are not really part of community. I mean, be it reading the news on our smartphones, be it watching TV, whatever it is, there are things that seem to take us away from community and interactive, face-to-face relationships. All of these practices in here are about face-to-face relationships and building community. And over the last year, I've really found that this experience here has really helped me grow in my sense of community with the new faces that we've met and the new connections that we have. The Bible study has been fantastic because we've really gotten to know people and really appreciate and know people at a deeper level than we normally do on a Sunday morning as we go through here for a very short time.
Yeah, it is amazing. When I was reading the book again this week, getting ready for this, a couple sentences that stuck out to me when she talked about practices. It says, practices address fundamental needs and conditions through concrete human acts. I love that because for me, so much of the faith I was raised with is like abstract ideas, like about what God's like, or doctrines, or different, but it's just concepts.
Yes.
The concrete practices of faith, like gathering as a community, really employ your body to be present with people and that connection. It's so powerful. And I just think it can't be stated enough.
And we live in a world where we're supposed to go out and find knowledge by reading a book or by attending a class or going to a workshop. And, it's hard to learn to play piano from a book. It's hard to learn to swim from a book. You got to get in the water, You got to put your hands on the keyboard, right, Joy? That's what practice is all about, is where, like I said earlier, the rubber meets the road. That's where we actually learn how to be in community and learn how to connect to people at a deeper level.
I'm just going to highlight one more thing because it ties into tonight, what we're doing. It says practices are done together over time.
Yes.
And I think for us, every 4 months we go through this rotation. We're trying this Lectio Divinas, this ancient way of reading the Bible. We walk the labyrinth together. We're going to go to a healing service or a prayer service together. And then we do body prayers. And so we've done this one rotation. Tonight we start round 2. So for people who are interested in maybe coming tonight at 6, what's it going to look like?
Well, it's going to be a time of really meditation. Lectio Divina basically is a form of meditation. It's not learning about the context of the Bible or who said it or when they said it or who they were talking to. It's about going inside ourselves and listening to what Scripture has to say to us today at this moment without worrying about what the original context was.
Okay, so we're going to meet in the chapel.
Yes.
At 6, do people need to bring a Bible?
No. Basically, most of your time is going to be quietly just sitting with your eyes closed, listening to the Bible be read, a passage out of the Bible. Right. And we read it 3 times, and you spend time contemplating what we read.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Last time was an eye-opening experience. It was the most time I had spent on one verse, and I couldn't believe all that came out of that one passage. I felt really inspired and kind of energized about understanding the world that we live in better. So I have high expectations for tonight.
Well, and one thing about practice is there's no one right way to do any particular practice, and we're still working with learning different ways of doing Lectio Divina, but it's like the labyrinth. The only rule to walking the labyrinth is you walk the labyrinth, and beyond that, there are many, many different ways you can approach it, and that goes with Lectio Divina, with scripture reading, with any of these spiritual practices. There's many, many different ways of doing it.
Cool. Can we thank John for coming and giving us leadership in this? A couple of announcements as we get ready to close the service. After the service today, we're going to head over to the fellowship hall. It was supposed to be a barbecue, but I guess the weather changed that, and now it's lasagna. right? And some other goodies. I walked over there, by the way, while you all were in conversation, and it smells amazing. So I hope that you will plan on sticking around, even if you didn't bring a side. There's more than enough food, and I will eat last, so I make sure that you get enough. I will volunteer to do that.